Well now, are you settled? Welcome back to Celticism, your place to come to for ghost stories told in the dark. I'll just sit here beside your bed a while the night settles outside. It's a quiet one, damp air, a bit of wind on the window, and that soft creak that comes when the house remembers it's old. Now, for our little trick. Don't close your eyes just yet. Let them soften, half open, half dreaming. Peer through your lashes and watch the room take on its other shape, the one that only shows itself when you stop looking for it. Breathe, slow, in and out. And you'll find that the longer you try to stay awake, the sooner sleep will come. Unclench your jaw, loosen your hands and your arms. If the floor creaks close to your bed, it's only the house leaning in to listen. And when the morning comes, drop a comment. Maybe tell me where you're listening from, like, subscribe, and tell a friend who loves a ghost story before sleep. This is the place you come back to every night, to rest and to drift. And for now, let's begin. They say across Ireland there's a woman who cries for the dying. The banshee. Old people still whisper about her when the wind turns sharp and the dogs stop barking for no reason. Her cry isn't for you, mind, it's for someone close to you, a warning that a home is about to fall quiet. She doesn't follow every house, only the old Irish lines, the O'Donnells and the O'Neills, the O'Briens, the Kavanaghs, the McMahons, and a few more whose names are older than the roads themselves. And when her voice rises, soft or far, it means that somewhere before dawn a candle will burn for the dead. 3 men sat in Griffin's public house, waiting out the rain. "Giagwich," said the barman, "come on in out of it." "Ah, thanks," said James. "The bog road would drown a priest tonight." He shook off his wet coat and went to the fire. The turf hissed. He wrapped his hands around a fresh pint and stared into the glow as though it might answer him. My roof's near mended," said James. "My girl saw to it. Only her and me now, truth be told, mostly her. She keeps the cows, sells the milk, pays the rent. Without her, I'd be under a hedge by Friday." The barman nodded without comment and went back to wiping the counter. The latch lifted again. A heavier man arrived with the smell of wet wool. "Kincaid well too. The fire's still alive," said the barman. Grand, fair play," said Tom, stamping water from his boots. He took the next stool, turned his back to the heat, and sighed. "Long way for a small bit of business." "What's the business?" said James. "Post," said Tom. "My brother's abroad at the docks. Sends a few bob often enough. He's the only soul I have left. If those envelopes stop, you'll see me gnawing the heel off this counter." They both laughed. Not kindly, not unkindly, the way men laugh when a thing is true and there's no fixing it. The door went again. A young man slipped in with the rain. "Jees, Margaret, thought you'd be shut," said Billy, grinning. "You're safe enough," said the barman. "Sit in." Much obliged," said Billy. "I'm in good form today. Me mother's coming to stay a bit, wrote me herself. She keeps the house like a queen, pot on, bed warm, shirts scrubbed. I've no one else in the world but her. Without that woman, I'd waste away to a rake." lucky man to have one, said Tom. Lucky and then some, said James. I live like a lord on me daughter's back. She rises in the dark, and I'm the Egypt gets thanked for an evening. Sure I'm worse, said Tom. I live off the bobs from my brother. Brother folds those notes into a letter like it's a secret. If he misses a week, I start counting the salt grains as if there's meat among them. You've nothing on me, said Billy. Me mother puts a coin in me coat and pretends she forgot. She coaxes the hens, sweetens the tea, smuggles a bit of bacon. I'm a king in that cottage and I haven't earned a crown. God help the country, said Tom, raising his glass. And God bless the women and their brothers, said James. They ate a heel of bread the barman cut down and shared it cleanly. The talk moved the easy way talk wants to, from ruse to money, from money to luck, and from luck to the old tales that sits nearest the fire. Nights like this, said Tom, nodding at the panes, you'd nearly stand out on the step and listen for the woman. What woman? Said Billy, smiling. The one that cries, said James. The banshee. Go on, said Billy. You'll have me looking under the stools. My mother swore she heard the keening the week my father took ill, said James. Said the sound would sour the milk in the pail and stop the dog mid-bark. Not a scream, a lament, like grief stretched thin as wire. And it's not for the one that hears, said Billy. No, said James. It's for someone of your own. They say, said Tom, she follows the old families. The rest hear wind and call it weather. I'll sleep, said Billy. Fairy tale nonsense or not. James smiled, faint and secret. They drank on that and grinned, and because men are men, the gloating came back like a warm coat. I swear to you, James said, I could vanish for a fortnight and the farm would run itself. The girl keeps the buyer sweet and the book's honest. If she's gone, the yard goes to weeds and I go to drink. Better than me, said Tom. I've the postman trained. 2 whistles when it's a plain letter, 3 when there's comfort inside in the shape of a few bob. There's days I bless that envelope more than mass itself. I've the best of it, said Billy. My mother salts the butter right and keeps a loaf under the tin for when I come in. She'll slip a few coins beside the bread and swear she's only keeping the tin even. I have a grand life of it. They laughed again, the sound rolling easy with the fire's hiss. Griffin's felt smaller, warmer, like a pocket of luck carved out of the storm. The barman pulled fresh pints. Another round? Go on, said James. We'll answer for it in the morning, said Tom. If there's a morning left, said Billy. The wind outside softened to a sulk. For a while, everything was ordinary. And then it wasn't. The sound came like a thread through cloth, thin, steady, and rising. It drifted along the lane, touched the eaves, and slid down the chimney like a breath. It wasn't wind or rain, it was sorrow, pure and shaped. The 3 men went still. The sound came again, closer now, filled with the human ache that doesn't belong to the world at all. Well, holy God, whispered Billy. Easy, said Tom, but his voice was tight. Listen, said James. The 3rd time it came, nearer yet, and the room felt smaller for it. Then, all at once, it was gone. Only the clock dared make a sound. What's wrong with ye 3 tulips? Said the barman, uneasy. He'd heard only wind and the settling of the roof. The 3 men sat very still. After a time, Tom turned his head. What's your name again? Said Tom. It's Billy, said Billy. No, said Tom quietly. Your full name? Billy blinked once, understanding dawning and dread rolling in behind it. McMahon, he said. Tom looked down at his own hands. I'm Kavanagh. They both looked to the man by the fire. And I'm O'Brien, said James, the word coming out like breath from an old wound. They froze there, 3 men of 3 lines the Banshee had followed since time began. No one spoke. The barman went on with his cloth, hearing nothing. Then, as if the thought had passed through each head at the same instant, the 3 men lifted their pints together. They drank in silence, eyes fixed on the middle distance, faces pale and far away. They didn't speak again for the rest of the night. They didn't need to. The only sound in Griffin's was the quiet tick of the clock and the small hiss of turf. Each man sat knowing that the wail had been meant for one of them, or worse, for the only soul each depended on, but none could tell which. And so they drank, slow and wordless, staring past the firelight, waiting for their cozy worlds to change. They said Sam Fahy had a decent face, not handsome, not clever looking, just the sort of face you'd trust with a latchkey or a tired mare. If a roof slate slipped, Sam would fetch the ladder. If an old man needed turf from the far bog, Sam shouldered it. He took no coin he didn't need, and never counted the steps it cost him. On the day it all went, it went like a shelf giving way. By noon, the foreman told him there'd be no more days at the yard. No order, Sam, nothing for it. At 2:00, a messenger boy slid a folded paper into his hand outside the priest's house. Notice to quit. The cottage to be taken for a cousin come home from America. At 4, he walked to a neighbour who had once said, "If you're ever stuck, you can call on me." And the man stood in his doorway and looked sorry and did nothing. By 6, he had the feeling a man gets when the whole town is looking through him as if he were glass. They said the right words, but nobody stayed. Near dusk, he carried a small canvas bag to the last wall before the fields and set it down. The sky over the low hills was the colour of tin. He stood a long time, waiting for his mind to find a plan. None came. So he did the only thing left that felt like choosing. He left the bag on the wall, put his hands in his coat pockets, and walked into the country with nothing but the clothes he had. He passed the last thatch, the pump with its iron handle, the yard where the hens scratched through ashes. A woman he often helped nodded and said, "God help you, Sam," and shut the door because the evening was cold. He walked on. He slept that night under a hawthorn hedge where the ditch dipped out of the wind. The coat pulled across him wasn't much, but it was what he had. He lay on his side with one hand under his cheek like a child and watched a star through the branches until it slid behind a cloud. He slept. Morning was sharp. He followed a lane that fell away from the road and came to a stone bridge no wider than a cart. The stream under it ran clear and quick over the black rock. He knelt and drank until the back of his head ached from the cold and felt better for it. He ate nothing. He never had much appetite when the day was thin. He made a little map as he went, a ruined byre with 3 walls and a roof of turf. A hazel copse with dry leaves that would take a coal. A willow with limbs that bent low enough to rest the back. He avoided yards, dogs, men in fields. He walked the edges where hedges and walls keep company. The sun came and went, and the lane changed to grass, and the grass to a narrow, beaten track. Dusk taught him where to stop. He slept wherever the wind was least. Days lined up and learned their place. He rose with the first colour in the east, walked until his feet argued and stopped. He drank at streams. He took late blackberries from briars, a few crab apples from a crooked tree overhanging a ditch. Once he found a half-grown turnip, rolled to the verge, and left a half-penny on the stone beside it, because a thing taken without thanks sours in a man's hands. On the 9th evening, the air went brittle. Sam decided to cut a little bramble to coax a fire from the last of the embers in the ruined byre. His pocket knife was sharp from habit. He set the bramble against his boot and sawed. The blade slipped. It ran a clean line along his shin below the knee, so clean he had time to watch it and think, careful now, and then the sting caught up with him. He sat hard, pressed his hands to it and spoke through his teeth. The blood slowed under the pressure. He tore a strip off his shirt, wrapped it tight, and knotted it. He washed the knife on the grass because he had nothing better. "That'll do," he said, and it did, for a while. By morning the cut woke before he did. A hot throb ran under the cloth. He walked on it anyway, and the pain walked with him, small at first, then stepping harder. He sat by the stream near noon, unwrapped the strip and hissed. The edges were red and puffed. He washed it with cold water, which helped, and it didn't. He wrapped it again and told himself he'd keep it clean. He told himself many things that day to lend himself courage. Toward evening, as he sat in the byre with his back to the warmest wall, he heard whispers, soft and close enough to make him turn his head, far enough to doubt his ears. He stood, looked into the trees that were only trees, and heard nothing. The sound left a feeling behind it, though, like a room just vacated. He woke the next morning to a smell that stopped his breath for a second. On a flattish stone inside the byre, not a foot from his hand, lay a small loaf of bread. It was the kind made by a person for themselves and not for show, brown, a bit humpbacked and still warm. Sam stared at it, smiled without meaning to, and said, "Oh." He looked at the door, the floor, the corners. There were no prints on the leaves, no scrape marks on the stone. "Thank you," he said to the open, because he was raised right, and he ate half with little sips of stream water and saved the rest. It lasted 2 days. On the 3rd morning, there was a twine-tied bunch of sloes. On the 6th, a stoppered flask with water clearer than anything he'd found by himself. On the 8th, an apple without a bruise or worm. He spoke his thanks each time. He did not ask who. In his heart, he set the gifts down to Providence and left it there. The wound said otherwise. By then it was angry. A red line crept from it like a thread being pulled. His step shortened. The sleep he got was the kind a man falls into because there's nothing else to do, and in the middle of it he'd wake to his own heat and the sense of being watched by, not malice, attention. It was only after that he saw the shapes. Late, one dusk, crossing a strip of hazel, something moved low along a fallen trunk and was gone. Brown hair, not fur, not clothes. The size of a small man or a big child. He went still, his heart loud, as a pail dropped. The thing was gone. He told himself it was a drifting branch or his bad leg twanging his eyes. He went on. 2 nights later, windless, he saw another, upright for a breath, then down on all fours, sliding between roots, hair hanging, a human shape in it, eyes in the leaves, quick as field mice, his throat closed. "Get away out of that," he shouted, voice cracking. He snatched a fallen branch and swept the air in front of him like a man beating back smoke. "Go on, drive on." A scatter in the hedges. Nothing to look at, only the knowledge that something had been there. He stood a long time, breath hard, listening to the quiet he'd been glad of a week ago and now hated. The gifts still came. He woke to find a heel of bread, a twist of herbs, a clean rag folded, and he thanked the air and tucked them into his corner. If a brown head peeped from a gap as he ate, he didn't see it. If small hands placed the rag when the fever took him, he took it for chance. And if fear pinned him at night, it was not of hunger now, but of company he couldn't name. He lay still and told the dark to leave him be. The leg went bad all at once. He tried to rise and the world tipped. He crawled to the door of the byre and the door slid away from his hand like a kneeling dream. He spoke to someone who wasn't there. He laughed once at nothing and slept from the whispers because there was no strength left. He thought he heard footsteps made to call out, and that call became a choke. He let go. He woke, moving. He didn't move himself. He lay on something broad and rough, and it swayed. Hands held him, small, strong, covered in hair. He felt them under his shoulders, under his knees. He heard breath, not at all like a man's, quick and even in more than one chest. He opened his eyes a crack when someone stumbled and saw lantern light pass across a face that was a person's and not, with hair lying over brows and cheeks like a shawl. Short, square figures held the edge of what carried him. Maybe a door, maybe a hurdle, and the nails were thick and dull. He shut his eyes. He did not have room for more. They set him down in a place that was earth and timber and root all together. The air held warmth and damp fern. A low fire gave off a steady heat from behind stones. He felt cool against his leg, a broad leaf laid careful, another over it, then a strip of bark binding them. He tried to lift his head. A hand, like a small spade, pressed his shoulder, and a voice tutted as if soothing a restless child. He slept and woke by turns. The fever went back a step, then a step more. Each time he looked, the leaves on his leg were new, slick with sap and smelled green and faintly sweet. In the corner of his sight, he caught them. Groggocks, though he did not have a word for it yet. Shy hill folk, their hair hanging like old straw, their eyes small and worried. One sat by his foot and chewed a root, watching him from the side so as not to stare. Another carried a bowl of water and didn't look at him at all. "Was it you?" Sam asked once, soft and hoarse, because gratitude has to find a mouth. The nearest lifted its head and made a small tilt that was yes and no together. Well, thank you," he said. You're very good." The creature put his head down and went on with its chewing. He began to know their sounds, the pad of them on earth, the little throat-clear one made before doing something fiddly, the contented puff another gave when it came near the fire. He learned not to reach out. They learned that he wouldn't. Trust sits better when no one hurries it. Hunger returned like a man knocking and stepping back from the door. They left him a heel of bread, a bit of cheese the size of a finger, a cup carved from knotty wood with water that tasted of stone and winter. He ate and slept and woke and watched the leaves hold. The pain dulled to a memory. When he could sit without seeing sparkles, one of them came near, glanced at his leg, and lifted the corner of a leaf. The skin beneath was no longer angry. It looked tidy, like a thing finished by someone who minds their work. The creature nodded once, businesslike, and went to fetch another loaf no bigger than a fist, set it in his hand, and walked away. Will I go? Sam asked the room, to be sure he wasn't ungrateful. The room didn't answer. It didn't need to. He stood the next morning and made the doorway. Outside, the light sat in mist along the roots. The world was narrowed and kind. Small footprints led into fern and were gone. He set his hand on the woven roots that made the frame and bowed a little because some thanks need a shape. He walked an hour like a man remembering his legs, then two like a man who had never forgotten them. The hill rose and gave him breath back on the far side. The stream beside it spoke a quick language that matched his pace. He stopped once and turned to look and saw only trees. That was right. He didn't go straight back to town. He made a circle through the small places first, because straight lines suit business and circles suit blessings. In a village by a fjord, he bought tea with the coin he'd kept in his boot for bad luck. The woman behind the counter looked at his face and said, "You've been out," and put an extra slice of bread on the plate without looking at him while she did it. He ate the bread last because that's how to honor a gift. Word went around in time that Sam Fahy was walking the roads again in his old ways, slower maybe, but steady. He fixed a latch for a window and wouldn't take coin. He patched a roof slate for a man who'd never thanked him before and left before thanks found him now. People asked where he'd been and he said, "Away," and smiled. When asked who'd helped him, he said, "Someone shy." If pushed, he said, "There's kindness in the hills," and changed the talk to weather. On certain mornings before mist lifts, if you go out early, you may see brown, hairy shapes slide along the edge of the first trees, keeping low, keeping watch. If you see them, don't call, they frighten. Let your eyes say thanks and keep your mouth shut. If you wake after losing yourself and find bread or clear water near your hand, eat and drink and say your prayers. If a broadleaf lies over a wound and the hurt has eased, leave the leaf to do its work until it loosens by itself. Years later, when the men with heavy boots and light heads tried the bog and the ridge and came home wronged by weather, they told of a warm loaf found on a stone, and soft feet passing in the night, and someone saying "hush" without voice. They laughed as they told it because laughter puts a hand on a thing and keeps it from blazing too bright. As for Sam, he kept his small ways. He grew older the way decent men do, quieter, quicker to pour tea for any soul with a trouble, slower to take pity and quicker to offer company. Sometimes on winter evenings he walked as far as the last wall and looked out at the fields and said aloud, "I'm well," to let a neighbour who doesn't like being seen know how he was. A branch might move where it shouldn't. He didn't stare. He left a heel of bread on the stone and walked home warm. If you ever stop him on the road and ask what saved him, he'll say, "Bread, leaves, company." If you ask whose, he'll look toward the dark line of the trees and answer, "They're shy." And that will be all you'll get, which is more than most deserve. Kindness likes a hedge. It works unseen. It keeps a man living when the world turns its head. And in the late years of the century, when the country was full of loss and pride and both, Sam Fahy would pass your gate with a nod and a tool over his shoulder, and you'd feel, for a minute after, that someone sensible had just gone by. Someone carried once by small hands through the dark, and made right by magic leaves and quiet bread. Daniel Cullinan pushed the door with his shoulder and slipped inside. The lamp already burned low and yellow. His father lay propped on one elbow, eyes shut, the breath a slow rasp. "All right," Daniel muttered, half to himself. "It's my turn again." He set a jug on the locker. The others had gone home. Someone had said he was the eldest, that he should stay the night. Someone always said that when work had to be done. He dragged the chair over, the scrape loud on the boards. "Grand job you've done for yourself," he said. "Whole family running shifts like you're the parish bell." The old man didn't move. Daniel sat, elbows on knees, eyes on the floorboards. "I bought the paper," he said. "Not that you'd care. Another row in the Dáil, another priest caught drink driving, same old shite. You always said the world was going to hell. Well, fair play, you called that one." Nothing. The rhythm of breath went on, dry as a saw through pine. He looked around the room, the plain wall, the cracked crucifix, the corner where Boots had stood for 40 years. "You could have at least cleaned before you started dying," he said under his breath. He shifted, restless. "Mary said you took a turn at noon, said you'd stop talking. Suits you, I suppose, quiet. You were quiet when it mattered too." Still nothing. Daniel rubbed his jaw. "Tom was here earlier. You smiled for him, didn't you?" "Of course you did. The great Tom, called Nan, apple of your bloody eye." He stood, paced to the window, pulled the curtain and looked out. The yard was still, grass silvered by moonlight, not a whisper of wind. The whole world looked like it was waiting for him to say the wrong thing. He turned back. "You remember the fair over there in Claremorris? I sold the calf, came home with £15 in my fist. You counted it, nodded and said I'd underpriced. Not a word of well done, just underpriced. I was 15. He laughed once, dry. I don't know why I remember that. You gave praise to the dog more often than to me." He paced again, faster now, words spilling. "Tom brings you a pint on your birthday and you call him a saint. Mary bakes you a cake, you're all smiles. I mend the roof in the rain and you stand below telling me I've missed a slate." He jabbed a finger toward the bed. "You trained me like a horse, Dad. Pull harder, work longer, don't talk back. I did it all, and you said nothing. His voice cracked. The silence that followed made him flinch. He breathed through his teeth, sat again, rubbed his hands together. "Maybe you didn't mean it," he said, softer. "Maybe that's just the way you were built. The world made you hard and you thought we needed the same hide. Maybe." He looked at the old face. "But Christ, you could have tried." He pushed the chair back and stood again, started to pace, muttering half sentences. "You never said you were proud. Never said good lad. You said..." His voice rose. "Mind yourself, do better, don't waste what's left. That was love to you, wasn't it? A command shouted across a field." He stopped at the foot of the bed, chest rising hard. "And you wonder then why I don't visit. You wonder why this room feels foreign. Because you made it that way." His hands trembled. He pressed them to his face. The breath shuddered out. "God help me," he whispered. "I came here to be decent." He sat again, close this time, voice dropping to a raw murmur. "You know what the doctor said? He said you'd lost your voice hours ago. Typical. You'd wait until now to run out of words, just when I finally have something to say." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You once gave me a medal. Do you remember that? The miraculous medal. Put it in my hand and said, 'Here, stick that in your pocket. Might do you more good than sense.'" He shook his head. "That was the only time you ever gave me anything. I kept it for years. Then one night I walked to the cliffs and flung it into the sea. Thought if I threw that, I'd throw you too." The old man's eyes flickered just once. Daniel caught it and swallowed hard. "Don't you dare die on me yet," he said, almost pleading. "I'm not finished." He leaned closer, voice rough. "Do you know what it's like, Dad, growing up, thinking you were born wrong, thinking every time you spoke, you said the wrong thing, moved the wrong way. I tried to be you, then I tried to be anyone but you, and neither worked." The lamp hummed faintly, sweat gathered at his hairline. He pressed on, words tumbling faster. "I hated you," he said. "There, I said it. Hated the sound of your boots, the scrape of your chair, the way the whole house stiffened when you cleared your throat. And I hate that I still want one word from you, just one bloody word that says I wasn't a waste of your time." He drew a ragged breath, stared at the ceiling, blinked against tears that burned instead of fell. "He'll say something," he whispered. "Anything." The silence held, then the hand on the blanket twitched. Slow, painfully, the old fingers lifted, searching. Daniel caught them without thinking. The grip was faint but real. The eyes opened, cloudy but aware. The lips moved. A rasp came from deep in the chest, a sound almost lost in the wheeze. Daniel leaned closer until his ear was beside the old man's mouth. "You?" The voice came, a whisper dragged over gravel. "You were the best of me, Daniel, my son." This sentence froze Daniel where he sat. The sentence hit him like a blow to the sternum. All the air left him. He stared, mouth open, eyes wide, every muscle in his face breaking apart at once. Then came the breath, the long, final one, and quiet after. The grip eased and slid away. The lamp guttered. The curtain lifted once, though no wind came through the cracked window. A thin hush spread across the room, deep and absolute. Something clicked against the floorboard by his boot, spinning low. Daniel bent down, dazed. The metal lay there, dull silver, chipped on the rim. The exact same chip as on the one he'd hurled into the sea, because it was the same one. He picked it up, turned it over in his fingers. A tear slid from his eye. He looked to the bed. The stillness was complete now. The old face was peaceful, the jaw finally soft. Outside, in that deep, dark night, a single white butterfly drifted past the open window into the dark. Daniel sat back down, metal tight in his fist. His throat worked once before the words came, cracked but steady. "You were the best of you too, Dad. You just didn't know how to say it." He stayed there until the lamp burned low, the metal warm in his palm, the room holding the silence he'd chased all his life, and at last understood. They say there's a woman who rises when the living meddle with the quiet dead, the Jargdu, the red drinker. Some call her a vampire, older mouths say a revenant, a wrong soul returned, not for sport, but for balance. She keeps a ledger no priest can bless, and no thief can dodge, disturb a grave, and something in the earth remembers your name. The shovels were already biting when the church bell muttered midnight across Enniskeane. 3 men worked under the crooked yew, breath smoking in the lantern light, clay lifting in wet slabs. They weren't mourners, they were grave robbers who had already opened 2 new mounds that night. Rings, earrings, a brooch, a purse stitched into a sleeve, and now shouldered into the 3rd before the cock would think of it. McGinley ran the job, broad, grey-eyed, cruel with practice. Shawnee Brogan shadowed him, laugh on a string, whiskey on his breath. Porrick Lynch, 16 and worn thin by debt not his own, took the spade work and the orders. "Keep her moving," Mick said, low and hard. "We have 2 pockets left to fill." Shawnee shook the sack so the jewellery chimed soft, proof of the first 2 graves. "A tidy night so far." Porrick kept his head down. The soil here gave too easy, like a lung under a blanket. He didn't like it, and liked it less that his own name had been read off one of the stones that stepped over getting to the place. His family somewhere in the dark, the yew looming like a warning. His spade rang wood. "Right," Mick grunted. "Up with it." They hauled the lid with the iron, wedged it, lifted. The lantern coughed and steadied. The dead woman lay small and neat under the shroud, mouth slack, a ring dull on her finger. Shawnee reached, working the band with a twist. "Easy," he told the hand, as if it could hear. The ring gave, slid free. Porrick felt the air change, not a wind, pressure. As if the yew had leaned in, he raised the lantern. Between 2 stones, low to the ground, a pair of yellow-white eyes caught the light, still as glass. "Do you—" he began. When the others looked, the eyes were gone. "Fox," Shawnee said, too fast, slipping the ring into the sack. Another pair blinked behind them, then left, then right, always just outside the lantern's reach. The night folded in, and sound seemed to fall straight down instead of travelling. "Work," Mick snapped. "The world's full of eyes. You'll see worse than foxes if we're here for day." They closed the coffin, patted the mound, and dragged their tools toward the far corner for a faster lift. The sexton wouldn't notice one neat square among the old ones. Porrick's boots found the ground, breathing. The lantern threw a thin circle, and beyond it the eyes reappeared, front, then side, then behind, as if the graveyard itself were placing them like pegs to draw a ring. Shawnee laughed too loud. "Come on out, love. We'll give you a dance." "Shut it," Mick said, not looking at him. They broke the corner grave fast, habit more than hunger now, and when the lid went up, the 3 of them leaned in, quick hands doing mean work. The sack's mouth opened like a small dark well. Something clinked softly as coins kissed buckles. "Go see what it is," Mick said when a step sounded near the wall. "Send the boy," Shawnee muttered. "I said go," Mick barked, and Shawnee went, swagger turning to a mutter by the 3rd headstone. Fog took him in 4 steps. His laugh flicked once in the dark and went out like a candle pinched. Minutes found a way to pass with no clocks. Porrick lifted the lantern and edged along the path. Between 2 slabs he found Shawnee lying flat, shoulders square to the sky. His eyes were open to nothing. His skin was wax pale, and his lips looked rimed, as if frost had formed there and been wiped away. His hands were curled, not clawed, emptied rather than broken. The bottle he'd carried stood upright, a foot away, beaded with dew as if it had stood there all night. Porrick made a sound that wasn't a word. Mick came, stopped, and set his jaw as if against a blow. "His heart," Mick said, too quick, too neat. He took the bottle and drank hard, then wiped his mouth with the back of his hand like a man finishing a job. Back to work they went, because what else was there to the next square of ground they'd marked in their heads at the start of the night? The eyes travelled with them, never more than a pair when you looked, always in a new spot when you didn't. Porrick began to understand. It wasn't many, it was one, moving faster than the mind that tried to pin it. They cracked the third lid. The dead man inside had been poor. His coat said so, his hands said so. There'd be a button, perhaps, worth a shilling. It felt like theft twice over. Porrick held the lantern and kept his eyes on the edges. A step in the grass, another, slow, certain. Mick swung the light. There was nothing. He swung it back and the eyes were close, no more than a yard, level with Porrick's own, catching the flame and painting red around the edges. Mick fired his pistol. The flash tossed the used shadow up like a black crown. Smoke held, then thinned. The sound went nowhere. It was swallowed. And then a woman's voice came from no place, and every place, a clear whisper over stone. You woke me. Mick's chin lifted. You're not old. You broke what keeps the quiet. We'll put it back, Porrick blurted, because something had to be said to the ear. You took what wasn't given. Mick steadied the pistol with both hands. Show yourself. The lantern died. Porrick burned his fingers in the frame, getting it back. When the light returned, Mick stood alone in the circle with him. Shawnee was gone from where he'd lain. The grass showed a smooth press, as if something careful had lifted and set him elsewhere. Mick, Porrick whispered. Move, said Mick, the word thin, his breath a saw. They cut between stones to the wall. The light found Shawnee again, this time seated against the stones, head tipped as if listening, his jaw slack with the last surprise. The fingertips of one hand were stained dark, as if he had dipped them in cold ash. Enough, Mick said, and for the first time sounded like a man who wanted a priest in the world. The eyes gathered then, front, side, back, 3 sights at once, a ring drawing tight. Porrick's mind flinched at it and then caught the trick. Never more than 2 together when he looked. The third was always where he wasn't. One watcher, too quick for the head to hold, making a crown from speed. Show yourself, Mick roared, and the voice that answered was not large at all, only inevitable. She stepped into the light because she chose to. She wasn't beautiful or ugly. She was finished, skin pale under hair matted with soil. A dress the colour of old linen, hem mud-heavy, a mouth too red, as if winter berries had stained it and would not fade. Her eyes were worst, bright as coal through ash and sorrowful with patience that had outlived names. She came a single step and the distance died like a lie. Mick lifted the pistol and found his wrist soft, as if someone had asked the bone to be a reed. The barrel sagged. He made a noise that belonged to a smaller man. She didn't touch him in the way a crowd would tell later. There was no tearing, no spectacle. Porrick saw the lantern quiver in his own hand, saw Mick tip forward as if remembering how to kneel, and then he was down, rolled gentle to the grass, jaw open, the skin at his lips salt dry like winter on a window. His coat had been buttoned by careful fingers that weren't his own. Porrick backed until his shoulders found the yew. The eyes, her eyes, held him. He put his hands out. palms open. Please, he said, and felt the word find no place to land. I'm sorry, I'll put it all back. I swear I will. I swear to God. He stopped. It felt wrong to borrow God in a place like this, under a tree like this. She tilted her head, as if listening not to him, but to what the ground said about him. And then she spoke. It wasn't loud or cruel, just certain. A lesson said plain, as if to a boy who might have done better if someone had told him sooner. There are two kinds of hunger in the world. The first is the kind that keeps a man alive. The second is the kind that eats the first. You didn't come for bread, boy. You came for shiny, for what glitters on a still mouth and what clinks when you shake a sack. You told yourself they don't feel it. That's tidy thinking. Tidy thinking makes a thief brave. Let me tell you a thing the earth knows. When a gate hangs straight, the wind minds its manners. When a field is sown, crows learn their hour. When a body is laid down with its own, the world puts a hand over it and quiets. Break that quiet, and you wake me. Not because I hate you, because the sun must come out even. You see a stone and a name and an image, nothing beneath it but weight. I see the last breath, and the hand let go, and the father who didn't cry where the child could see him. I see kept promises. I see night closing right. You took from the kept, and the kept takes back. Here is your lesson then. Leave the dead to their dead. Leave the ring to the hand that wore through winters you'll never be brave enough to count. Leave the small purse sewn into the sleeve by fingers that trembled from love, not age. If you can't do that, at least have the manners to carry a spade for yourself. She smiled then, a small, almost fond smile, as if he'd nearly understood. Porrick's chest shook. He dared a step of hope towards her. I won't do it again, he said. It came out like a child's promise. I'm not like them. Not yet, she said, and there was no sting in it, only arithmetic. For a breath, he believed she might let him go. The belief warmed him. In that warmth, he felt exactly how wrong it was. The ledger wasn't hers. It was the ground's. She was only the hand that wrote what must be written. He let his hands fall. He closed his eyes because he couldn't give himself that much decency. There was no scream in the graveyard, no rattle, no theater, only the sense of a room tidied and a door drawn soft to. Dawn ironed the mist flat. The sexton came up to see what last night's wind had done and stopped at the gate. Under the yew, the 3 graves the man had opened stood closed again. The mounds were smoothed in, the turf patted with a care that wasn't the sexton's. Their tools leaned against the tree, 3 shovels and a crowbar, clean. He crossed himself because he was the sort that still did, and because some mornings asked for it. No ledger in town would ever say it, but each of those graves held 2, the rightful dead, and an extra folded quiet where no hand would search. If any man later wondered where Mick Hanratty had gone, and Shawnee Brogan, and Porrick Lynch, who had always been good with gates, well, the country is wide, and the sea is wider. People make up kind lies when truth would make things best left sleeping. On certain nights when fog lies like wool and sound won't travel, a passer-by at the wall may see 2 eyes watching from the stones. turn and find them behind, turn again and meet them side on, and think himself ringed. It is never a ring, it is always one, moving too quick for reckoning, keeping a ledger straight that men can't stop smudging. They say she still walks the hill, the Revenant of Sorrow, doesn't haste, doesn't hurry, doesn't miss. She only lays back what was lifted, and when the balance sits right again, the yew quiets, and the earth puts its hand gently over the town once more. It was a dull, damp morning in Dunloch Woods, the kind of morning that made your bones ache before you had even done a thing worth aching over. Birds sang half-heartedly, the wind sighed through the firs. And then there came a shout, a curse, and the clatter of something small, angry and ancient being hoisted into the air. For the love of, will you put me down, you half-witted fence-post? A wiry little man dangled upside down, caught by the ankle in a snare. From behind a tree, McGinley stepped out, grinning. I gotcha. The leprechaun twisted mid-air, beard swinging like a rope. Gotcha, he says. You'll have me guts for garters before breakfast, you will. I'm an old man. You're a legend, said McGinley, and legends owe wishes. I own nothing but me own arthritis. McGinley squatted down. I'm not asking you twice. The leprechaun folded his arms mid-air. Well, you're not getting an answer upside down. Untie me and we'll talk like civilized fools. A minute later, the rope hit the ground with a slap. The leprechaun straightened his coat, fixed his beard, and glared up at the much taller man. Right, said McGinley. You're a leprechaun. I caught you fair. That means I get a wish. Caught me fair? Lad, I tripped on your stupid string. And if you think you can bully a man of 674 years into charity, you're sorely mistaken. 674, said McGinley, unimpressed. You look rough for 50. Skeeveen, the leprechaun, squinted up at him. You've a tongue like a rusted hinge. What's your name? McGinley. Just McGinley? Aye. Well, just McGinley. If you're wanting a wish, we'll have to go to where the rain changes colours. McGinley frowned. You're speaking riddles already. What's that supposed to be? The rainbow, you cabbage. Now move your legs and mind the holes. I don't bounce like I used to. They walked and walked. The road wound through bog and briar, mist hanging like smoke over the pools. McGinley had his collar turned up and his patience turned off. All the while, Skeeveen muttered on. Do you always talk this much? Only when I'm kidnapped, said Skeeveen. What is it with you lads? Always looking for wishes, never content with what you've got. I've got blisters, said McGinley. Then you've got proof of a good walk. Proof I should have stayed in bed at this rate. Skeeveen chuckled, the old broken sound of a man who'd smoked his voice away centuries ago. You remind me of a lad I once knew, always frowning, always complaining, died smiling. Know why? Because he was dead? Because he finally realised none of it mattered. McGinley sighed. You're full of great wisdom, aren't you? Comes free with the beard. By morning they stopped by a stream. Skeeveen cupped his hands and drank. Water dripped down the white of his beard. McGinley leaned against a rock, staring down at him. You'll catch something, you know. Good, said Skeeveen. I've been bored stiff since 1798. He sat beside him and rummaged in his pocket, pulling out a lump of something wrapped in brown paper. What's that? Treacle toffee, he said proudly. I've had it since Easter. Looks it, said McGinley. Skeeveen bit down, winced, and muttered something about false teeth. Then he nodded at McGinley's satchel. And what's in that jug? Bread and rashers. You're holding out on me. You didn't bring any gold, remember? The leprechaun rolled his eyes. You're some Christian. They walked again. The rain turned to drizzle, the drizzle to fog, and through the quiet they started talking properly. It wasn't deep at first, just the kind of road talk that fills the gaps between hills. Are you married? Skeeveen asked. No. Why not? Never had the luck. You're chasing me for luck right now. A different kind of luck. Said Skeeveen knowingly. A woman then? McGinley didn't answer. She broke your heart, did she? I never got a chance, he muttered. Didn't notice I was alive. That's the best kind. It keeps the hope burning. I don't need hope. I need her to see me. Skeeveen grinned. And there it is, the wish. McGinley glanced sideways. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. It's written all over your face like dirt on a shovel. So, tell me her name. McGinley sighed. Lorraine Delaney. The most beautiful, kind, loving sweetheart you'd ever lay your eyes on. Well, lad, Skeeveen said, I'll tell you this, and I'll tell you it now straight. I've heard of worse wishes. By the time they stopped again, night had crawled in. They made a small fire under a stone ledge, its smoke curling into the drizzle. Skeeveen stretched out his small legs, sighing like an old door. You're not from around here, though, are you? Just over the ridge. Why? You've got that look. Someone who doesn't quite belong anywhere. I had that once. McGinley smiled faintly. Oh, yeah? What cured it? Love, said the leprechaun, staring into the fire. A woman named Alva. She had hair like wheat and a temper like thunder. She'd hit you with a frying pan if you looked at her wrong, then kiss you better after. He laughed, quiet and genuine. She'd sing while she cooked, never for anyone, just herself. And when she died, the world went quiet. Been walking since, waiting to hear her voice again. I haven't yet. McGinley looked at him differently now, not as a creature, but as someone lonely. That's rough, he said quietly. Skeeveen nodded. Aye, so if you ever get her, this girl of yours, hold on to her. Don't waste a second being a stubborn gobshite like me. I'll try. Try nothing, said the leprechaun. You do it. Morning came in grey and wet. They crossed a wide stretch of moorland, the wind driving the fog low. McGinley had stopped complaining now. They were walking in a companionable silence. Finally, a faint shimmer of colour rose over the next ridge, soft and bright and bending through the mist. There, said Skeeveen, where the rain changes colours. McGinley stopped and stared. Are you serious then? This'll work? It always works, said the leprechaun. Just not always the way you think. They climbed to the ridge. The rainbow sat like a bridge over the valley. The grass shimmered. The air was warmer here, like the world was wrapped in a blanket. Skeeveen turned to him. Right so, lad. Close your eyes. Think the wish. Feel it. Don't speak it. Make it real. McGinley nodded, his jaw tight. He closed his eyes, and maybe it was nothing, maybe it was just nerves, but there was a small twitch in his brow, and he lingered a second longer than he should have, a breath too long for a selfish man. Then the world lit up. The rainbow pulsed brighter, flooding the ground with light. Skeeveen stumbled back, clutching his chest. And then a shape stepped out from the light. Not a tall shape, a shape as tall as Skeeveen himself. And there she was, Alva, his wife, his love, his everything. McGinley couldn't bring himself to do it. He couldn't bring himself to be selfish. He'd come to grow fond of Skeeveen, and Skeeveen had grown fond of him. And what better way to celebrate a newly found friendship but with a gift of young love reunited.
I don't know what to say, lad,
Skeeveen said.
That was the only wish, and you wished it for me.
Aye, McGinley said. Maybe I need me head examined, but there you go. The two leprechauns enjoyed a loving embrace, and together they walked back the way they came, laughing, joking, telling old stories and stories of what's yet to come. A year later, word spread through Dunloch about a near tragedy on the high road. A cart had gone wild, and a young man had thrown himself forward to drag a woman clear. This woman's name was Lorraine Delaney. She worked in the baker's, always smiling, always helping. And her knight in shining armour that day was named, of course, McGinley. They were married before the next spring, and every morning you could hear laughter through their open window. Some said McGinley had met a strange old man in the woods, and that whatever passed between them changed both their lives. And others swore that sometimes, near the river when the light was low, they saw a tiny figure walking beside a woman with hair like wheat, his hands tucked in hers. When asked about wishes, McGinley would just shrug and say, "Best thing I ever did was keep one for someone else." The storm had been building all day. By nightfall, it was nothing but white sheets of rain against the glass and the rattle of wind through the slates. Ailing heard the noise first, the hollow knock of wood on stone, and looked out to see a man beside a cart struggling with the wheel. The poor horse trembled, the reins slick with rain. She pulled on her shawl and hurried out, shouting through the wind, "You'll be washed away out here." The man turned, startled, but smiled the moment he saw her, a warm, easy grin that made him look younger than he was. "Oh, much obliged, miss. Wheels stuck again, always does in the worst weather." "Bring yourself in till it eases off," she said. "You'll catch your death in this." He hesitated, then nodded and followed her in. Steam rose from his coat in the firelight. He took off his hat, wiped his brow, and let out a long breath. "Foley," he said, holding out his hand. "That's the name." "Hello, Mr. Foley," she said, smiling as she shook it. His palm was rough, calloused, a working man's. "I appreciate this," he said, settling near the stove. "Been on the road half the day. Never thought I'd ended half drowned." She poured the tea, set bread and cheese between them. He was easy to talk to, clever, funny in a quiet way. They laughed about stubborn horses and gossiping townsfolk. The more they spoke, the lighter the room became, the storm outside turning almost pleasant to listen to. He looked around, admiring the old beams and the flicker of light across the walls. "This is a lovely place," he said. "You on your own in here?" She nodded. "Aye, my husband built it before he passed, 20 years gone now." "Solid work," Foley said, glancing around. "There's real warmth to it." She smiled faintly. "And yeah, he put his heart into it, so he did." Foley leaned back, nodded as though thinking it over, then said with a grin, "Do you mind if I have it?" Aileen laughed, one of those startled, genuine laughs that spell out before you think. He laughed too, for a moment, and the sound was warm and full, until it wasn't. The grin stayed on his mouth, but not in his eyes. His face went still, the light in him gone like a candle snuffed. "I'm not asking," he said. The words were calm, almost polite, but something in them stripped all the air from the room. He held her gaze. The fire crackled, and the rain pressed hard against the windows. Ailing forced a small laugh. The sound brittled. "You've an odd way of joking, Mr. Foley." "I'm not joking," he said. "A house needs an owner, and you've had your turn." The discomfort stilled her. You should finish your tea." He nodded, lifted the cup, sipped once, eyes never leaving her. "Ah, that's lovely," he said. "Strong, the way I like it." Silence pooled between them. The wind moaned in the chimney. He reached slowly into his coat pocket and drew out a small leather pouch. "Do you know what I like about good manners?" he said, turning it in his hands. "They keep folk alive. A cup of tea, a warm fire, a bit of kindness. They open every door you've got. You never know who's walking through it, so it pays not to slam it in their face." He leaned forward, took her hand gently and placed the pouch in her palm. "Refusal," he added, "is a dangerous thing to practice." She felt the weight of it, cold and light. "Tell me," he murmured, almost kindly, "would anyone hear you scream?" Her throat clasped. He smiled, thin as a knife edge. "Do you know what happened to the last 3 people who said no to me?" He nodded toward the pouch. Scared, she loosened the drawstring with shaking fingers. 3 human tongues spilled out into her palm. Terrified, she leapt with the scream, spilling her teacup, smashing it to the ground. Foley lifted his head as if listening to the distance for a response to her scream. "Ah, I didn't think so." She rose, backing toward the scullery. You'd best be on your way." "Leave?" He tilted his head. "Now why would I leave my own house?" A gust rattled the door. The lamp wavered. He stood, slowly, the chair legs scraping the floor. Sit down," she said, forcing strength into her voice. "I'm standing in my own home, miss." The lamp guttered once and died. Darkness fell so suddenly it fell thick. The wind pressed at the walls and the last glow from the hearth barely reached beyond the grate. Ailing stood still, trying not to breathe too loud. She could hear him somewhere in the room, not moving exactly, just there. "Mr. Foley," she said quietly. Something creaked. A chair leg dragged across the floor. Then his voice, lower now, almost kind. "You needn't sound so frightened. I only want to see what's upstairs. Always did like a look around the place before I settle in." Her hand found the edge of the table. She edged along it, trying to remember where she had left the matches. There, beside the flower tin. She struck one. For half a heartbeat the room flared orange. He was closer than she thought. Right at the end of the table, eyes wide, smile stretched and fixed, rain still glistening in his hair. The flame died. She bolted for the hallway, fumbling for the front latch. The wind shoved back at her. The door wouldn't open. Behind her, the scrape of boots on flagstone. She turned just in time to see the glint of a knife and the faint shape of him lunge. A pain ripped through her leg, blood spilling. She fell hard, hitting the floorboards, hearing his breath above her. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said, "but you made me." She kicked out, caught his shin, crawled toward the scullery door, blood warmed down her calf. She grabbed the iron poker from beside the stove and swung wildly. Something cracked, his hand maybe, and he hissed through his teeth. She used the moment to pull herself up and limp toward the back door. It flew open with the storm, rain slashing her face. She stumbled into it, half blind, feet sinking in mud. The yard was a blur of black and silver, the cart, the horse, the low stone wall. She crouched behind the cart, heart hammering, and tried to listen over the storm. Bootsteps in the muck, slow, measured. He was enjoying it now. "You'll freeze out here, miss," he called. "Best you come inside. I'll stoke the fire for you." She pressed a hand to her mouth. The blood from her leg left prints on the wood. Then she saw something in the cart, a corner of the canvas flapping loose. She reached up and pulled it back. Bodies, 3 bodies, pale faces in the rain, throats sliced open, neat and careful. A man, a woman, and a child. Her stomach turned. She nearly screamed, but a sound from behind her stopped it, that soft, satisfied breath. He was standing at the other side of the cart, head cocked, watching her. The knife, long and thin, glimmered when the lightning came. "Told you," he said, almost gentle. "House needs an owner." He started around the cart. Ailing ducked low, dragging herself along the far side, the mud cold up her arms. Every few feet she let a drop of blood fall, thick and dark, on the stones, leading away toward the gate. But she hadn't left through the gate. She jumped the side wall by the coal shed and had circled back behind him without him knowing, whilst he followed the blood trail. He was humming to himself, knife loose in his grip. When he reached the gate and bent to study the ground, she came up behind him with the shovel in her hand and swung it with everything she had. The sound was dull and solid. He dropped to his knees, turned a little, eyes clouded with disbelief. She stood over him, shaking, rain and sweat in her hair. For a moment he looked almost small. She lifted the shovel again. "Goodbye, Mr. Foley," she said, and brought it down. By morning the storm had cleared. The guard found her sitting on the step, blanket around her shoulders, the fire in the house still burning. They took Foley away in the cart he'd come in, the horse silent as stone. They said later he had been wanted in 3 counties, families gone missing, houses found empty, same bloody massacre every time. She'd been the first stop to him. And in town, when folk passed her on the road and tipped their hats, they said she never did sell the house, but she kept the shovel, polished, standing by the door. When you wake in the morning, please like, subscribe, and leave a little comment below. Your quiet clicks and words are what keep this place alive, the small echoes that let the stories go on. Come back every night. This is your resting place. Good night.